Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. The second guest of the day is a co-host of the Wild Card Champs podcast. It's a Yankees podcast you can find on YouTube. And my guest is Sean Verma. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. All right, let's just get right into it. The big story yesterday broke. The Mets basically were sold by the Wilpons. Well, it's really going to be 5 years to this rich guy, Steve Cohen, who has 4% of the team. He'll eventually have the majority stake of the team at 80%. What was your knee-jerk reaction once you saw the news that Ken Rosenthal reported yesterday?
Hopefully the Mets don't win the World Series before the Yankees do.
Yeah. We'll see about that, though. I think the Mets are good, but I just don't know if they're gonna be like World Series good like right away. But yeah, just absolute crazy. I'm sure you weren't expecting that news, were you?
No, I wasn't. Where I was going with that is just ask yourself this. Imagine if the Mets actually started spending money and going star chasing. How good they could possibly be.
Then they'd be closer to the Braves and the Marlins. Or I'm sorry, the Braves and the Nationals than to the Marlins. But they were closer to the Braves and the Nationals this year than to the Marlins because of the second half resurgence that you predicted on this podcast. Do you remember that when you came on and predicted that the Mets were going to go on a second half run?
I did. I've had some good and bad predictions on your show.
Yeah, and that to me was your best one.
That's one that I take credit for.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the one that stands out because I was like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. They just needed a couple things. Playing the Marlins a couple times in the week schedule, and then sure enough, they took advantage of a week schedule and found themselves 10 games over 500 when the season ended and ultimately fired Mickey Callaway. And yesterday, the Philadelphia Phillies signed former Met Zach Wheeler, 5 years, $118 million. Do you think that was an overpay?
Remains to be seen. I'm not sure either way because I think the pitcher market is just changing over time, and because Garrett Cole is expected to get a record-breaking deal, I think that was just natural that a Zach Wheeler-like pitcher was going to get money that at the time might look a little bit absurd. Think about A.J. Burnett when the Blue Jays signed him to that weird contract, and then he opted out, and then the Yankees went and signed him, and you're kind of thinking, well, Burnett is an average pitcher with high strikeout potential, sort of like Zach Wheeler. I think there was, I might have been Joe Rivera or someone like that who compared Wheeler to Burnett.
That's an interesting comparison there, Wheeler and Burnett, except Burnett was... Oh, wait, Burnett is a righty. I keep thinking Burnett was a lefty. But no, that is not a terrible comparison, but I don't know if that contract's going to work out, because Wheeler's had so many injury issues in the past, and he has really kind of just been inconsistent other than bits and pieces of last year, and in the year before he finished the season hot. And now there's that argument that the Mets should have traded him at the deadline. But you could make a case if they didn't trade him, or if they did trade him, then they wouldn't have finished 10 games over 500. So there's two ways you can put it. But I actually give the Mets a little bit of credit for not overpaying for a guy that, in my opinion, is a middle-tier starter, not an ace starter like Jacob deGrom or Max Scherzer or Cole or Strasburg. And speaking of Cole and Strasburg, they are on the free agent market, and the Yankees met with both these guys out in California, and I really think they're serious because why do you think they sent out not just Brian Cashman, but Aaron Boone, new pitching coach Matt Blake, and bring out Andy Pettitte? Like, they're serious about this. What do you make of Andy Pettitte going with all those guys to the meetings out there?
Not to discourage you, but the Pettitte thing sort of reminds me of when they tried to bring Matsui to court Shohei Ohtani.
Oh.
And then he spurned them by saying, no, I want to sign with this small market West Coast team. I don't think Cole is Ohtani. I'm going to preface you there. I think it was Jeff Passan who said on the Michael Kay show that Garrett Cole wants two things. He wants to be the best pitcher of his generation, and he wants to win. And So right there are two teams that come to mind that at least the winning part can make that happen. The Yankees and the Dodgers.
Yup. Absolutely.
So I think that the Dodgers are actually a bigger threat than the Angels.
I agree.
Just because when you look at the winning perspective, what does Garrett Cole do to the Angels? Does he turn them from like a 78-win team to an 84-win team? 84 wins is not going to win the American League West.
No.
Even without Garrett Cole, the Houston Astros are still a formidable team.
They are, but they're not as good. And even if they lose Garrett Cole, they have some other questions too, especially with the cheating scandal. You might have your manager suspended, so that team might be headed for a bit of a free fall, assuming that there's going to be some penalties handed to them. Because I've seen in other sports, other than Deflategate with the Patriots, but Bountygate with the Saints. What happened to the Saints after Bountygate? They were a disappointment and went like 6-10 or 7-9. I know it's a different sport, but like I've seen teams get hit with scandals before and not like recover from it within like a season before. I know the Patriots are the outlier, I get it, but like I won't be flabbergasted if the Astros drop from like 100 wins to like maybe like 90 and then like maybe in the high 80s. And let's say like Oakland gets better. Maybe the Rangers make a few signings. Maybe that's the team that signs Garrett Cole. Don't rule them out. And then they sign Anthony Rendon. I wouldn't rule out the Texas Rangers at all next year to go on a run. And especially if they make two like significant additions, one being Rendon and one being like a pitcher like Cole. So like I think there's a chance that the Astros drop a little bit. So that's a team, in my opinion, that I think is in a little bit of trouble. Despite the whole Cole thing, I think the cheating thing is a big deal and it's not getting enough attention. Do you think A.J. Hinch gets suspended, by the way?
I mean, is there really precedence for those kinds of things? That's the ultimate question. That's something that I'm not fully aware of.
It could
for major cheating scandals that lead to managers getting suspended. Because, you know, the black box thing was like 100 years ago. I don't exactly know what happened to the manager of that White Sox team. So if there is precedence, then yeah, it probably will happen. I think, going back to your expectations that the Astros would fall off, you know, I think with a ton of turmoil, the Astros go from a 107-win team to a 92-win team.
Yeah, and that doesn't even guarantee the division, especially if Texas makes improvements and Oakland's good.
I think it guarantees them being a wild card contender.
Wild card contender, yeah, probably the first wild card gets 92 because I think 95. I think Oakland's going to be good next year with a couple more additions. And Texas, I think, is a few like big spending free agents this year away from being a legit threat. I'm not sold on the Angels because I don't think the Angels, I don't think just Garrett Cole would make them a contender. I think that the Rangers are motivated to spend because of the new ballpark. Like, I buy all that. And plus, the Rangers are a big market team down there in Arlington. So, like, I just wouldn't rule them out. And the Mariners are going to stink. We know that. And I think that's a team that's obviously going to be making trades. So I think it's between Yankees and Dodgers for Cole. And I think the Rangers are a wild card in this as well. And I feel like it's going to be a mystery team like the Rangers that signs Cole. I feel like that always happens. With the exception of Harper to Philly, I feel like a mystery team always ends up signing big free agents. Like, the Padres were a mystery team last year for Machado, right?
Yeah, I don't think that would have happened, though, if some other teams stepped up sooner. Like, there was this standoff between the Yankees and the White Sox for quite a while. Oh, and the Phillies. Those three teams just kind of in almost like a chess match to try and figure out who's going to bite first on Machado. And then no one ever did bite. So the Padres said, all right, we'll just give him $300 million. There you go.
Yeah, and Hector Gomez, who I think is a fraud in terms of reporting things, said that Machado to the White Sox was done. Remember that?
Remember when Dan Clark Sports said that the Yankees were going to sign Machado before New Year's Eve? Yeah,
that too. But the Hector Gomez one stands out because that happened more recently than Dan Clark. Dan Clark's was before New Year's, and Hector Gomez was reporting that in like January. And that one I just remember because I thought he was going to end up with the White Sox after he reported it, and then I learned that guy's a fraud and doesn't know what he's doing. Although, if I'm not mistaken, he did nail the Robinson Cano PED suspension a few years ago, so I'll give him credit for that. Are there any other possible moves that you could see the Yankees making other than a possible acquisition of Gerrit Cole?
I mean, I'm sure you've heard of the whole Josh Bell rumblings of how they could try to create a package for the Pirates' first baseman.
Yes, I did see that, but I don't buy it entirely.
I'm not saying that I think it will happen. I'm saying that it's something that I guess could happen.
It could, in theory.
There's always that possibility, especially if the Cole thing falls through, that they do call up the Indians again and say, what do you want for Corey Kluber? That was actually a trade that I was just almost on my knees begging the Yankees would do a calendar year ago.
Yeah, me too.
That just never happened. I guess the Indians wanted Esteban Florial, and the Yankees just were like, this guy's an untouchable. And it's funny what happens in a year. Florial is really looking like a bust now. And I've been almost emotionally motivated to remind people of that at least once a week.
Yeah, Florial definitely has gone from untouchable to okay, we don't mind trading him. And here's another thing. And so much for what changes in a year. A year ago, I was hoping they'd trade for Corey Kluber, and this year my fallback hopeful option is trade for another Indian starting pitcher, and that is Shane Bieber. What do you make of Shane Bieber, who I think is the best pitcher on the Indians right now?
Oh, I would not mind Shane Bieber at all. I actually think that would be a pretty savvy move. And, after all, Matt Blake is the former Indians minor league pitching coach, right?
Yeah.
So he would have had a rapport with Shane Bieber as far as I'm concerned. So that actually could be a very interesting acquisition. It wouldn't, get me jumping up and down in excitement the way a Gerrit Cole or a Steven Strasburg signing would, but it would certainly be a place to start. It should be another young arm in the rotation that has ace potential, if nothing else.
I think
and
that
cost control too.
Oh, I think that this guy could be better than Severino, personally. Right now he's on the Severino level, but I think that he could potentially be a Cy Young candidate. And I think that this guy would have been top 5 Cy Young had he not faltered a little bit down the stretch last year. I know he had a terrible start against the Yankees in June, and I was expecting the Yankees to get shut out in that game. It was a Sunday day game in June in Cleveland, and he got roughed up in that game. And if I'm not mistaken, the Indians, that was the game where Didi misplayed the ball in shortstop, and the Indians came back to tie the game. Yankees ended up winning in extra innings on a sac fly. I think it was by Aaron Hicks, if I'm not mistaken. And I just remember I had to miss the end of that game because I had a party to go to. So I was like, oh, of course the Yankees win when I leave my house to go to a party. And then it was that game where Shane Bieber got roughed up, and I wasn't expecting Shane Bieber to get roughed up. But yeah, that's my I'll be okay with that fallback option if we don't end up with Cole or Strasburg. Winter meetings are always a fun time in the calendar years. What is your favorite memory of the winter meetings from the past? Just a random trade or free agent signing that surprised you or whatever that you just remember that.
I'm only 20 years old, so there haven't been a lot of memorable Yankees winter meetings. But the one that stands out to me, and I don't remember if this was exactly the winter meetings, was the A.J. Burnett signing. I'm pretty sure that was around winter meetings, right?
Yes, I think that was at winter meetings, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, winter meetings 2008. That was 11 years ago.
Yep.
And the only reason why I was excited about that acquisition at that moment, and more so than not as much as Sabathia, but the only reason I was excited about that one in particular is because, one, I was 9 years old and I didn't know a lot about baseball. I couldn't tell good pitchers from bad ones. And I just remember he went 5-0 against the Yankees as a Toronto Blue Jay. So I was like, this guy might be really good.
But he did help out in the 2009 World Series. Got to give him that.
Yeah, that's probably the only memorable start that he had that was noteworthy, because the other ones were
gotta give him credit.
The other ones were just whatever.
Yeah, I always will forgive him for Game 2, or else we don't win that series. I know he blew up in Game 5, but winning Game 2 was very, very important, especially after CeCe blew up in Game 1. I'll never forget that. My favorite
standards were a lot lower back then also, because I had grown up watching, like, Chain Ming Wong being the Yankees ace.
Oh my God, Chain Ming Wong.
I would have been in my younger years back then. One Adrian Burnett moment that it was, the Yankees probably weren't going to win the World Series that year because they didn't have Cliff Lee when they could have got him. But when Burnett gave up that deflating home run to Benji Molina in the 2010 LCS,
my God.
That was like the defining moment of that series that kind of sealed it for Texas. I feel like that was the true TSN turning point.
Yeah, I remember being out that night watching that game, and I was just so upset. And I think I remembered that series ended fittingly on A-Rod striking out looking. And I think the Yankees were was that a home game that they lost in Game 6 or on the road? I feel like it was a road game,
They
right?
were in Texas.
Yes, it was a road game. And I remember A-Rod struck out looking to end the game, and, like, everybody was, like, so upset, and, like, everybody was screaming, F you, A-Rod, and all that. And now I love A-Rod, and I love that he's having a great life, and I love seeing him on Fox and ESPN all the time. My favorite winter meetings memory was, this isn't a Yankees-related one, but I just remember this because this was a moment that kind of changed things for the Red Sox in a bad way. John Lester signing with the Chicago Cubs. It was announced at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I remember I was so excited, like, yes, the Red Sox are not getting John Lester back!
That excitement must have been short-lived, though, because, 2 years later, they traded for Chris Sale?
Yeah, but at the time I was like very, very, very excited that they weren't bringing him back. And then Lester obviously helped the Cubs win the 2016 World Series. And I just remember MLB Network at 2 o'clock in the morning was live covering the John Lester signing with the Cubs. And they were saying like, oh, here they come. Joe Maddon's there now. And they signed John Lester. And this is going to be a contender for years to come. And they were a contender the first year under Madden in the year nobody expected them to be good. I think I picked them to be a surprise team that year, but I didn't pick them to make the playoffs. But they made the wild card that year as year Jake Arrieta won the Cy Young and not John Lester. John Lester was okay that year, but Jake Arrieta was their best pitcher that year. And that's absolutely crazy, just thinking about that memory. Do you ever remember there being a big rumor at the winter meetings in the past that didn't happen? Like, I remember a few years ago, the San Francisco Giants, it was similar to John Lester. Like, they were linked to John Lester, and a lot of people thought that the then reigning World Series champion San Francisco Giants were going to sign John Lester. And then the Red Sox were in play for it, and then he ends up going to the Cubs. So do you ever remember a big rumor that was hot at the winter meetings that didn't happen?
Well, I mean, I got to go back to a year ago when the Yankees were having trade talks with the Mets for Noah Syndergaard.
Yeah, that too.
We go back to that one. That one's a recent one for me. This one was probably longer, and like the Burnett signing, I don't remember if this was exactly around winter meetings or not, but this was a signing that could have happened that didn't. It was the Yankees' second attempt at acquiring Cliff Lee when he spurned them to go to the Phillies.
That's the one that Terry mentioned to me on my podcast because I asked him the same question. I said, do you ever remember there being a big rumor at the winter meetings that didn't happen? He said that one. He said the Cliff Lee going to Philadelphia instead of the Yankees. That was the one that he picked.
I like Terry Cushman. I like Terry Cushman. He tells it like it is.
Oh, absolutely. And guess what? I'm going on Benny and the Bets on Sunday night.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yeah, so there's an opportunity for me to go on somebody else's podcast, and obviously it's going to be retweeted by me and all, and I hope that Yankees Twitter isn't going to be mad that I'm jumping on a Red Sox podcast. So I just want myself to be out there more, and I want opportunities. So that's a perfect opportunity. And I'm a Yankees fan, battling out with a Red Sox fan. We both speak it as it is, and I love Terry's personality. He's a fun one. Him and I agree on a lot of things, and he has some interesting Red Sox takes. I hope that you take a listen to the podcast I recorded with him, because he's very, very down on some of the Red Sox stuff, and he is in favor of them trading Mookie Betts, which I think is absolutely crazy. What do you make about him being in favor of trading Mookie Betts?
I mean, if I were a Red Sox fan right now, I'd probably feel the same way, because the writing is on the wall. I mean, the Red Sox, the team that they put together, the team that Dave Dombrowski kind of put together, is they've hit their peak already.
Yep.
They won a World Series. You know, they accomplished what they set out to accomplish. I know it probably didn't end the way that Red Sox Nation wanted to, but at the end of the day, I mean, there are cycles in this sport. And the reality is, like, the Red Sox have too much money tied up in David Price. I think, while Chris Sale was one of the top pitchers in baseball at the time of his extension, I do agree with Terry's point that the Red Sox didn't need to extend Sale when they did. They could have, waited a little while longer to see how much he's worth after another season. Can he stay healthy for a full year or the majority of the year? Because I do abide by this take that, number one, it's important to be good. It's important to be good at your job. It's another thing to be available. Being available is actually quite important too. And, Chris Sale's been breaking down earlier and earlier each season, it seems like. 2017, he was dominating baseball for more than half of the season. And then he struck out 12 Yankees in a game at the stadium in August. That was the game that Chapman gave the home run to Devers.
I remember that game, Sunday Night Baseball.
Yeah, and then only a few short weeks later, he comes back to Yankee Stadium and they crush him. So and that was really when he started to decline. As we get closer to the end of September, he's getting hit around by a bunch of weak-hitting teams. I put an asterisk on the Astros playoff game because of the sign-stealing thing.
Yep.
I never thought Chris Sale was that bad, and now I have reason to believe that Chris Sale is actually not a playoff choker, and he's just had bad luck against him.
Yeah.
2018, it was even worse, though, because he was even more dominant in the first half than he was in 17. But then he had that injury around August that took him out of the Yankee series, a moot point because the Yankees got swept.
Yep. They got swept because Greg Bird couldn't field the ball.
They got swept because Severino didn't show up when they needed him the most. No one really showed up, let's be real here.
Yeah, the Bird play stood out to me because if he catches that ball, the Yankees win that game.
That was the nail in the coffin. Yeah, that sealed the division. Sale, he was coming back from the DL, and then he go back on again. His velocity dipped, and remember there was rumblings about, is Sale going to have the velocity to beat the Yankees in the playoff game? And he did. But there's been so many question marks about Sale since then. Remember the belly button thing?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
It was in the middle of the Red Sox-Astros series where he was sick and needed to go to the hospital, and then he got like a belly button ring. It's just the Sale health thing has been very weird for some time, and it kind of begs the question. I mean, he's pretty skinny. He's not your average build for a starting pitcher, and his deliveries are very funky. His mechanics, I mean, they work. I guess they produce results because he gets a crap ton of strikeouts. But you got to wonder if his long-term health is severely affected by his overall build and the fact that his pitching mechanics are so unique.
Yeah, very interesting points. And another winter meetings for fun question for you. How about a fast rumor that you will never forget that became reality? I'll never forget. It had been like 4 years ago. Ken Giles, former closer of the Philadelphia Phillies, rumblings started at the winter meetings that the Phillies were selling high on him and he was available on the trade market. I remember their ex-GM, Ruben Amaro Jr., comes on the MLB Network set. Oh, he's not available for trade. Next day, he's traded to the Houston Astros for 4 prospects, including Vince Velasquez. Which one to you stands out as like a very fast rumor that became reality?
I'm gonna go with the Stanton trade. I mean
That too. Good one.
It's recent, but I have to kind of not to stick to the recent ones because I'm not very old. I haven't been around for very long.
Yeah.
So I remember I was in first year. I was in first year university, in the third year now, and I was in the middle of my exam period, and I was studying for a calculus exam. It was a Friday night, and it's just going on Twitter, and there were people saying, "Oh, there's rumblings that the Yankees are going to try and offload Jacoby Ellsbury's salary," and then it went from that to the Yankees, and I think it was the Yankees and the Dodgers are in on Stanton. Stanton wants to go to the 4 championship series teams. So that was Yankees, Astros, Cubs, Dodgers.
Yep.
And then it went to the Yankees would look to trade Starlin Castro, and I wasn't sure that was going to happen, and I wasn't really all excited about an acquisition because it kind of just felt like it was going to be like just another big bat and a team that hit a lot of home runs. So I went to bed and I was like, we'll see what happens. And then I wake up and it's just ablaze. Giancarlo Stanton's a Yankee. I had an exam in like 20 minutes, so I had barely enough time to process it, and I was just like, wow.
Yeah, it was on a Friday night.
This is an adjustment.
Yeah, I'll never forget where I was, too. I was at a party, and I was at the party, and I see a tweet from Ken Rosenthal, Yankees are very much in on Giancarlo Stanton, and I'm like, holy effing shit. I'm going absolutely nuts. And then the next day I wake up and Giancarlo Stanton's a Yankee. I'm freaking out. Like, oh my God, this is great. And here's a fun fact I'll never forget. My best friend actually called the Stanton to the Yankees trade because him and I were talking. It was initially Giants or Cardinals for Stanton. Like, those are the 2 teams, and the Dodgers were in there too. And then he just goes, he's going to the Yankees. And I'm like, oh, you're just a Yankee boy, because he's a Yankees fan too. And he's realistic, though. He's like us. And, like, I called him out and called him Yankee boy because he said flat out, he's going to the Yankees. And then a week later, he's on the Yankees. And the next time I saw him, like, I have to give you credit. You called that trade. He's like, yeah, I did. And then, yeah, it's just a crazy memory with Giancarlo Stanton. That's another one that stands out for me, the hot rumor that became reality. That's my favorite Yankees hot rumor that became reality, as well as one of my favorite memories of... It was right before the winter meetings, too, because the winter meetings started the day after the Yankees pulled off the trade, because they had the press conference at the winter meetings, and that was all everybody was talking about at the winter meetings. And then one that fell through was obviously Cole 2 years ago, and then they took Houston's offer instead of the Miguel Andujar, Clint Frazier offer, and that would have changed a lot of things. But you never know, because Larry Rothschild, and I wonder how Cole would have fit with the Yankees if he would have been as good as he was with the Astros. So there's always like that random what if there. But I still think he would have been a great acquisition. He's even better now than he was 2 years ago, and now I'm like all in on. I hope the Yankees get this guy. Who do you think?
I'd love a fireball strikeout pitcher that doesn't give up a boatload of home runs to garbage teams.
Me too.
So, yeah, I think Garrett Cole would be a great fit.
I think he'd be an amazing fit. And honestly, I did not want Patrick Corbin last year, and I'm going to stand by it because I think that Garrett Cole is a much better pitcher than Patrick Corbin, and Garrett Cole is better than any of those pitchers that were available at the trade deadline in July, too. And that's why them signing Garrett Cole would be humongous. Like I said, Cole's better than all those guys that were dealt last year, whether it's Stroman or any of those guys. And then the guys that signed last year, like Corbin and Keuchel. So that's why, to me, this would be a monster deal. Do you watch the Major League Baseball Network 24/7 during the winter meetings like I do?
No, because I live up north. There's some, like, TV packages where you can get MLB Network. Mine doesn't because I'm with
oh, that's right.
I'm with Cogeco, but like we get Sportsnet and stuff, right? Like Hockey Night in Canada, and
right?
All that stuff, and But Tim and Sid, I'm not sure you know what that is.
I know who Tim and Sid are.
Okay, yeah. So
Heard of them.
Tim and Sid's on basically every day, on Sportsnet Radio and Sportsnet channel itself. But yeah, we don't have MLB Network. At least my TV package doesn't. But I still follow like the MLB Network Twitter account and things like that. So I'll still see little snippets of like Mad Dog Unleashed and things like that.
Yeah, they post videos on their Twitter feed all the time. Who do you think is going to be the biggest name to sign at the winter meetings this year?
See, I don't think Cole's getting signed in the winter meetings. So that I gotta throw that one out. This might. I think it probably will be like a Josh Donaldson type player. He'll probably find a team to sign with during the winter meetings. And he just won Comeback Player of the Year. I always knew he still had it. I always knew the guy was a stud, even when he had his down year in 2018. I knew the Braves were going to get a good player when they signed him to that one-year deal. The question is he going back to the Braves, or is another team going to give him like a 3-year deal or something like that? 3 years, 65, 70 million, something like that.
I think he's a sneaky Yankees candidate.
I guess where you're going with that is third base is kind of still a question mark, because you have the whole Andujar thing, and then you have the question of, is Gio Urshela for real, or is he a one-year wonder? I always thought that, worst case scenario, the Yankees can just put DJ LeMahieu at third base, but, it doesn't hurt, if they have the money lying around. I mean, Garrett Cole's the number one priority, but,
they're focusing on Cole right now.
There's rumblings they're going to try and offload J-Hap's salary, which I think if they get an opportunity, they got to take it, because he doesn't really have a fit on the team at all.
Send him to Milwaukee.
Never really excited with the signing to begin with, just because it was so soon after the Corbin fell through. It was just like, it felt like such a major letdown. And what was even worse was that the Rays had signed Charlie Morton for the same amount of years, but way cheaper. And you can't just. Anyone who knew anything about StatCast and advanced metrics will tell you that Charlie Morton was a safer bet to succeed than J-Hap. And yeah, let's see how that turned out.
Yeah,
it turned out pretty in favor of Mr. Charlie Morton.
Oh, absolutely. Even though that the Yankees went further in the postseason than the Tampa Bay Rays.
We're comparing players though, not teams.
That's true. That's very true. The Rays got the better value, absolutely, and the better pitcher for sure.
They're a small market team. They have to rely on brain power to build teams. The Yankees have way more of a budget to work with. Those two transactions, the Rays got more value out of their transaction than the Yankees. Might not have helped them get further in the playoffs, but if you think about it, if the Rays played the Twins in the first round and the Yankees played the Astros in the first round. It was the other way around. Maybe the Rays get to the ALCS instead of the Yankees. Oh,
for sure. And now it's all asterisks because the Astros are cheaters.
Yeah, see how that all works out?
Yeah, I had to say that because I like to pick on the Astros with the whole cheating thing. Who do you think could be a sleeper team at the winter meetings this year?
I think Toronto's going to make some kind of a move, and I only hear that because I live in the area and I listen to the radio a lot, and everyone's talking about how Ross Atkins is very, very keen on being aggressive in the starting pitcher market. I think Hyun-Jin Ryu is the pitcher that probably gets signed in the winter meetings, and I think he goes to Toronto.
Wow, that's a bold call. They need an AC type of pitcher. Ryu would be.
They need because they don't have Strom anymore. They need somebody, and I don't think he propels them from a 65-win team or whatever they were to a 95-win team, but they could probably be that third, that sort of bubble between the third and fourth place AL East team this year, or possibly even second if the Red Sox epically tank and the Rays just underperform. But Hyun-Jin Ryu is a piece that they should try and acquire to have some stability in the rotation where they have so many young prospects that are all unproven commodities. I'm a bit excited about the Nate Pearsons and Anthony Kays of the world. As a Yankee fan, I say, well, I mean, how many times did Yankee fans get excited about Manny Banuelos and Andrew Brackman and Dellin Betances? And Betances became a great reliever, but the other two guys, just never became anything.
Yeah, you got to give Betances credit. He did become a dominant reliever.
Betances is probably my favorite Yankee of this decade.
Oh, my favorite Yankee this decade is probably Aaron Judge. Because I just love his power.
Judge would be my favorite Yankee if he didn't play in those last 3 years. If his Yankee tenure took up a larger portion of this decade, I'd probably lean towards Judge. But Betances was like the only exciting thing to watch from those mid-2000s teams. It wasn't that it was fun to watch relievers. It was more just watching Betances just look absolutely nasty and striking guys out looking like every single batter. In 2015 when he was just completely unhittable for the entire season.
He was unhittable that whole season, yeah. Yeah, I love Dellin Betances. I hope the Yankees bring him back, and I think it's a possibility. I actually predicted that on my offseason predictions podcast that the Yankees would bring back Dellin Betances.
I'd be okay if they didn't, but yeah, part of me hopes that they do.
I want them to, personally.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
I'm
biased. I like Dellin Betances.
Yeah, me too.
All right, let's move on from baseball quickly to the NFL. Give me your thoughts on the Packers real quick. That's your favorite football team. Do you think they're going to win the NFC North, or do you think Minnesota catches up a little bit?
Because the Vikings lost to the Seahawks, you got to think that was a real blow for them. I think if the Packers crop themselves against the Washington Redskins over the weekend, then yeah, I'm going to say the Vikings probably win the NFC North. But because the Packers have Washington, Chicago, Minnesota, and Detroit, 3 out of those 4 games, you expect that they're going to win. The Minnesota game in Minneapolis, which the Packers haven't won there since 2015. That game could end up being a moot point if the Packers win the other 3 games, because they have the division tiebreaker. Because they're 3-0 in division, whereas the Vikings right now are 1-2.
Exactly. I think it's going to come down to that game in Minnie.
I think the Packers' final record is going to be like 12-4. I think they lose a Minnesota game, but I don't think that ends up losing them the division. Look what's happened to San Francisco. They were like what, 10-2, and then the Seahawks won on Monday, and now they're the 5th seed.
I know. Now San Francisco's the 5 seed. I know. That's crazy how the league is. It really is the Vikings and the Packers, the Seahawks and the 49ers, and the Saints is your top tier. And then Dallas is like the last playoff team. Let's just assume it's Dallas. And then there's teams like the Rams that have kind of just been kind of there, and the Bears have just been underachievers this year. And then there's teams like the Panthers who were a surprise early and fell off. And then there's like those terrible teams like my Giants and the Redskins. Oh, and then the Bucs are, I'd say, a step above those Giants-Redskins teams because they've been playing better. And then the Cardinals are just really, really bad. So the NFC has like 4 or 5 different tiers of teams. It's very strange how the NFC...
I want to address something. This is related to the whole NFC East thing and how the Dallas Cowboys are 500 and they're first place. They're going to get that 4 seed because the division winners always take up the 1 through 4 seeds.
Yep.
So a team with a better record than them are going to have to play on the road against them, which sucks for that team. If the playoffs started now, that team's the 49ers.
Yep.
But, everyone's freaking out about the NFL playoff format and how can a 500 team make the playoffs with 4 seed? And I'm just sitting here like, you know what? I'm old enough to remember the legendary 7-9 Seattle Seahawks.
I was just thinking about that.
I'm old enough to remember that legendary team that got to host a playoff game against a defending Super Bowl champion New Orleans Saints and won that game. They won the game.
I remember I was sitting in my living room watching that game, just in absolute shock. And Marshawn Lynch with that famous run. And then the next year, Pittsburgh, 12-4 or 11-5 Pittsburgh at 8-8 Denver, Tim Tebow to Demaryius Thomas. Don't forget about that one as well.
Yeah, the Packers actually they were 8-8 in 2013 because Aaron Rodgers had his first major injury of his career, so he missed part of the season.
Yeah, that's an
He comes
asterisk.
back.
That's an
He comes
asterisk
back
because
in
of
the last-
Rodgers.
Yeah, he comes back in the last game of the season, throws a miracle touchdown against the Bears in Chicago that gets them into the playoffs. They barely snuck in, and then they got crushed by Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers for the second year in a row.
I thought that game ended on a field goal for some reason. I thought the Packers lost on a field goal.
No. You're right. That's the game. That was the game where they lost. It was close. The blowout game was the year before, right, when they lost.
In San Francisco was the blowout game.
Yeah. Both of them were crushers.
Yeah, but the one that they lost on the field goal was the year Rodgers got injured. I remember that.
That one, well, I don't know. That was. I'd gotten mentally checked out because I never thought that Rodgers was going to come back. So when he did it, it felt so weird, and it was like, wow, did we actually just make the playoffs? And so when they lost on a field goal, it almost felt like you knew it was going to happen. You knew they were going to find a way to lose that game. But yeah, I would say there were a lot of mediocre teams that sneak their way into the playoffs in the NFL. It's kind of the way it works. I've never been the biggest fan of division playoffs myself. I've always thought that put the best teams by record in. Tiebreakers should be, either an extra game, like in baseball when they used to have the game 163s. You can do differential. In the NFL, I guess that'd be point differential. You can do all sorts of things for tiebreakers, but I don't like the fact that the 1 through 4 seeds are handed to the teams that win their division, because every once in a while you are going to run into a 7 and 9 Seahawks team, and it's not like those things are rare. They're happening more often than you might think. The Cardinals were a sub 500 team that snuck into the playoffs. I think a couple of years after the Seahawks did. So it happens quite a bit.
Was it the Cardinals or was it the Panthers? I think the Panthers were like 7 and 9 in the division winner, and they won the game because the Cardinals were on like their third string quarterback.
Was it the Panthers? You might be right.
And the Cardinals were playing at the Panthers in that Saturday late afternoon playoff game. I just remember that.
Yeah. There was another game where I remember the Seahawks in division game got to play like a really, really mediocre football team that barely squeaked out of the wild card, where the Packers had to sweat it out against Tony Romo and the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's right. That was a while ago.
Yeah.
Tony Romo. All right, before we go quickly, thoughts on your Maple Leafs who fired Mike Babcock a few weeks ago. We were supposed to have you on the podcast like right after that happened, but I had things to deal with. So give me your quick thoughts on the Maple Leafs and Mike Babcock's firing, and whether you think they can turn their season around or not.
Real talk here. The Leafs are a dumpster fire. They're really not. They're not fun for me to think about. It was just the other day when I was pulling an all-nighter. Me and a buddy were just studying for our thermodynamics exam. I'm just chilling here. Got multitasking, got my laptop, got the Leafs getting crushed 6-1 by Philly. So they're, even after Sheldon Keefe took over as head coach, they've still been kind of The wins that they've got have been quality wins where they're not giving up 6-7 goals. They're giving Freddie Anderson a chance to win. For the most part, they're not playing horrifically in their D zone. But I think, there are little storylines like Austin Matthews, not having a point in the last 5 games. There's a lot of I think there's a lack of leadership on this team. I really do. And it's crazy to say because that was the whole point of them signing John Tavares, was to bring in not only a star player, but a sort of a captain-type player. And I was thinking, well, did they do that because they're not confident that Matthews can be that guy? And I'm starting to see why that is, because Matthews this year specifically has been incredibly streaky. He's either positively or negatively affected my fantasy team, depending on what week it is. The Leafs as a whole are very, very frustrating to watch. Tyson Barrie's only taken off recently, ironically after the Babcock firing. once Sheldon Keefe allowed him to play looser, the very thing that people say the Leafs shouldn't be doing, they have to be playing a tight checking game. As soon as they become more freewheeling, kind of like the Lightning play, Tyson Barrie, all of a sudden, he breaks out and scores in 3 straight games. I'm still kind of, weary about that trade. I'm not totally sure if he was the type of defenseman the Leafs should have acquired, because I've always leaned more towards a stay-at-home guy. You like defensemen that can score, but scoring is not really a problem for the Leafs in the grand scheme of things. It's keeping the puck out of their net. That's the problem.
Exactly. And quickly, before we go, Raptors off to a fantastic start. Tough loss last night, or the other night in overtime against the Heat, but what are your thoughts on them and the improvement from Pascal Siakam from this year, or from last year to this year?
Oh, I knew Pascal was going to have a big year. It'd be funny if he wins Most Improved Player in consecutive years. No, I didn't think the Raptors were going to be. I didn't think they were going to miss the playoffs just because Kawhi went to the Clippers. Because I think the core is in place, and whether you believe in clutch or not, or big game players in the NBA, I do. I totally buy into the either you're a big game player or you're not. With the championship experience that Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam and Norman Powell have, I'm like, well, now they're a notch above like Lowry and DeRozan, whose playoff experiences consisted of getting swept by LeBron in back-to-back years.
Yep.
So I just thought, you know what, like, the culture is there. I think Nick Nurse is right now the best coach in Canadian professional sports, period.
Right now, yeah.
So I think I'm not surprised that the Raptors are doing well. The record is better than I thought it would be at this point, but defensively, they have one of the best defensive ratings in the NBA, and that's how they win games. They're able to score points, though, because Pascal is having a career year, so that certainly helps. But even Fred, he's shooting about 60% from the field, something like that. OG Anunoby, who got hurt before the playoffs started last year, hasn't missed a beat. They might not have a true big name superstar, which is what they needed to win the title last year, but they're still good enough that they can get into the playoffs and win a round. I never doubted that.
Yeah, they are very good, the Raptors, and they're better than I thought. I did pick them to make the playoffs this year. I think I had them as the 5 or the 6 seed before the season, and they're obviously going to be better than that.
That kind of makes sense that most people would have put them there. I mean, the really conservative projections had them at the 7. I'm like, okay, the East is not that good. I would have expected Philadelphia and Milwaukee and potentially Boston to finish ahead of them also. But at this point, I think the only team that's going to do that is Milwaukee. It's going to be like last year where the 1 and 2 seeds are Milwaukee and Toronto. And if the Sixers get hot, maybe they take the 2 and Toronto falls to the 3. But even then, I mean, it to me at this point, it really doesn't matter all that much because Giannis is a free agent soon, and I'm praying that he becomes, the first really big signing in Raptors history.
If you have the cap space for it, you never know. And if you start winning, then, I mean, you did already start winning. Well, the case is for any team, if you start winning and you have a good core. Yeah, I wouldn't sleep on the Raptors in terms of Giannis destinations in 2021, but we'll save that for another podcast. It was a pleasure to have you on today, and we'll certainly have you on after the new year, and I hope you have a happy holiday.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.